Just into CNN, a spokesperson for U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg confirms to CNN that he will travel to Ukraine next week for a meeting with President Zelensky to continue, and I'm quoting now, an important dialogue between the two countries. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, at least 10 people have been killed as Russian missiles bombarded the region overnight. A maternity hospital in Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, has been evacuated after sustaining significant damages in that overnight strike. No injuries have been reported to any women or children, thank God, at least so far. This morning, Ukrainian officials are also investigating potential Russian ties to yesterday's brazen assassination in broad daylight on an SBU agent. You can see him walking here before shots rang out, creating panic on the streets. Assassinations have played a key role in both the Ukrainian and Russian plans since the war began. CNN's Tom Foreman has more.
Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine more than 3 years ago and the very visible fighting began, the Ukrainians have been mastering largely invisible warfare, picking off key Russian targets in places they might have thought safe.
What we know what happened is that she was traveling in this vehicle when the vehicle blew up.
In 2022, the daughter of an outspoken Russian war supporter who also promoted the Russian cause was killed just outside Moscow. In 2023, a pro-war Russian blogger was killed in St. Petersburg, reportedly by a bomb hidden in a small statue. In 2024, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, a key figure in Russia's radiological, biological, and chemical defense forces, was killed by a bomb planted in a scooter just a few miles from the Kremlin. And a car bomb took another general in a Moscow suburb earlier this year. In every case, Ukrainian agents were either highly suspected or Ukraine openly took credit. What's more, the covert agents have played a role in some of the most dramatic drone attacks. After Operation Spiderweb damaged or destroyed scores of Russian aircraft in June, the head of the Ukrainian Security Service celebrated.
Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that Russia must feel what its losses mean.
By all accounts, the Russians have tried to do the same, allegedly repeatedly trying to assassinate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, among others. That's one reason the killing of that security service agent in Kyiv is drawing so much attention, and according to some international reports, celebration on the Russian front. Tom Foreman, CNN.
Thanks very much, Tom, for that report. Joining us now, the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Oksana Markarova. Thanks so much for joining us, Ambassador. The overnight strikes by the Russians on various civilian targets in Ukraine, including that maternity ward, just the latest escalation in the mounting Russian military offensive on Ukraine. President Trump says the United States will provide additional defensive weapons to Ukraine through NATO. How critical are the weapons to Ukraine's survival at this point in this war?
Good morning, Wolf, and thank you for having me. They are critical. They are critical. As you said, unfortunately, despite all the effort, despite hard work that Ukraine does together with the US, together with others, not only to defend ourselves from this aggressive war, but also actively seeking peace, working towards peace, Russia is showing the opposite. They're choosing war. And they are doubling down not only on the front lines, where they have at the moment 695,000 Russian troops on our territory attacking us on a very long front line, but also this terror against civilians. You already mentioned the maternity hospital today. Yesterday, on July 10th, there was massive attack, 10 hours on Kyiv. A couple of days ago, Odessa, Kharkiv, I mean, all the places. And just a quick number for you to compare that all these attacks are not just happening like they did before, but actually Russia increased 10 times compared to last year what they're sending. So June 2024, 488 strikes against civilian targets in Ukraine. June 2025, 5,700 strikes by missiles and drones, and it's all civilian targets. So air defense, of course, is critical, because despite the fact that Russia is doubling down on their aggression and war, Ukraine is defending itself. Ukraine is, people are, of course, tired and scared, but they are relentless in our resilience and in our devotion to defend peace and dignity and our lives in Ukraine.
And as I mentioned, Ambassador, the U.S. is now considering providing additional defensive weapons, air defense systems, for example, to Ukraine through NATO. Give the weapons to NATO and let NATO then provide the weapons to Ukraine. Does this further potentially Ukraine's ability at some point to be added as a formal official NATO member?
Well, Wolf, we are working with our American partners, with Trump administration, with all other branches of government on every possibility to actually increase this. So whether it's the provision of the weapons, which is ongoing, whether it's purchasing more from the United States, or even producing together and developing more. And that's what President Zelensky discussed a number of times, and we're working actively on it. If it will be done through NATO, of course, this is a very convenient framework to do so. Ukraine is an AOP status partner with NATO. We are working actively towards potential future membership, of course, with NATO. And the interoperability is very important for all of us, because frankly, we know that we are not only defending ourselves there. We just need to listen to what President Putin and others are saying and threatening not just Ukraine, where they already waged this aggressive war, but so many other countries. And we have to deter them from attacking them.
This week, President Trump said he was, quote, not happy with President Putin at all. That's a direct quote. And later added that Putin is throwing a lot of BS at the U.S. Are you encouraged about President Trump's change in tone toward Russia and specifically toward Vladimir Putin?
President Trump has been very clear from the very beginning, and we are grateful for his push for peace. And as you have seen, Ukraine responded to every initiative of President Trump, whether it was the full unconditional ceasefire, which is a great idea, or partial ceasefires, or any type of negotiations. Whenever we have discussed it, Ukraine has always constructive. We have been, our president personally have been where he needed to be, or he sent a delegation. Unfortunately, it's Russia and Russia only that not only started this war, but also is saying no to peace right now. Well, hopefully, together through this peace through strength approach, we will be able to convince them actually to take seriously what we have been saying, Europe is saying, and what President Trump is putting on the table. It's very easy for Russia to actually end this, and we have to motivate them to do that. And the bipartisan legislation that is in the Senate and in the House. And in the Senate, we have already 85 core sponsors of the sanctions bill. It is a great bill. I mean, we are very constructive. We are ready for peace. Ukraine is eager to discuss the modalities. But if Russia is refusing, then we have to move ahead with more weapons to Ukraine. And all of them are defensive because we are defending ourselves, and more sanctions and isolation to Russia.
This is clearly a critical moment in the Russian war against Ukraine. We'll see what happens. Ambassador Oksana Markarova, thanks as usual for joining us.